Hey guys, this is Courtney from Will's Bloom, and today I'm here to talk to you about how to identify what's holding you back in your astrology chart. This is definitely linked to the previous video that I did about how to live up to your highest potential. And that's really how we transform our most difficult aspects in our chart, our most difficult life experiences, into our superpower. So we're getting more into the nitty-gritty in this particular video to talk about the 5 areas where I see people hold themselves back the most and what that actually looks like in terms of astrology. So let's go ahead and get started. The first most common thing that I see from people is a very strong Saturn, and this can oftentimes manifest as a fear of not being enough. Saturn in the chart will come up in our lives when we are feeling extreme self-doubt, perfectionism, and we might never even get started on something because of a strong Saturn. We can also see where we might have our own fear of failure, and that again prevents us from taking risks, taking chances, and going out and trying to make things happen. So for example, if you have Saturn squaring the sun, like I know many people do, there can often be points in time where you are really doubting yourself and you don't always have the confidence to full on 100% commit and put pedal to the metal with your car or whatever in terms of your life goals, because the sun is our life direction, our purpose, and with a square to Saturn, this is going to slow it down. It's going to hinder it. And it's not just because there are specific blockages in our lives, which could always be the case for Saturn. It could be something outside of us, like let's say you want to buy a house but you don't have the money, or you want to go on a trip but you have a kid and they're sick, and I don't know, there's always like practical limitations. But I'm also talking more so about Saturn's internal limitations. So when it's squaring the sun, you are doubting your own wisdom around how to move forward, your own clarity, which is the sun, wisdom and clarity in our life. And so it's the internal lack of foundation, the internal uncertainty, the fear of failure, all of that comes through with Saturn. And that's not just Saturn. So if you have Saturn basically aspecting any of your planets in a difficult way, like a square, an opposition, a conjunction, you'll really see that fear come into that particular area of your life. But also with the South Node or planets in the 8th house, there's usually fears tied to these. So the South Node, for example, is responsible for removing energy from whatever planets it's touching. This can be great for spirituality purposes, but it's not always the best for having that planet help you achieve certain goals in life. So if you have South Node on a planet, there may be ways in which that planet is somewhat dysfunctional or disharmonious with the rest of your chart. And so that could be a particular aspect that can leave you feeling more self-doubt, more lack of clarity, fear of failure, feeling like you're not enough, all of those things. That's really common. And then planets in the 8th house, as I mentioned. So planets here are usually also fearful, but that's more from a trauma perspective. So Saturn and the South Node tend to be more karmic fears that we decided, okay, I'm coming in this lifetime, I'm going to resolve this issue. Maybe I'm carrying this with me from past lives, or maybe I'm playing out some kind of karma that I need to just learn a specific lesson. Planets in the 8th house are a little different in that they are typically rooted in trauma from this lifetime, from our childhood in this lifetime, maybe past life as well, but there are very distinct and specific fears around them. So there's usually a fear around being hurt, around being inadequate and being rejected. So Saturn does have those fears as well, but it comes out in more of a perfectionistic tendency, whereas planets in the 8th house will come out as you kind of guarding yourself, as you kind of maybe shutting things down, or just being more fearful and not taking specific risks with that planet and your heart. All of these kind of manifest as not taking risks towards your goals, but they're really coming from a slightly different place. Saturn just always makes us feel like we're never doing enough, we're not good enough. And planets in the 8th are specifically fearing a situation that has maybe already happened from happening again. They're fearing it from happening again in their lives in a new form. So regardless, they all manifest as feeling inadequate in some way. A lot of our insecurities are stored in the 8th house. So whatever sign is at the cusp of the 8th house or any planets there are going to teach you a lot about what your insecurities actually are. And if you don't have any planets there, look at the sign and look at the planet that rules that sign to further understand those insecurities and what could be holding you back. So let's say, for example, you have Aries on your 8th house cusp. Then you're going to look at Mars to understand, where is that childhood trauma coming from? Where are those fears and inadequacies coming from, and ways that I might kind of haul up and hold back my heart? And that will really show you there. Okay, method number 2 is self-sabotage. And I was very good at this for a long time. And I think I probably still do it in some ways, but that's something that I've really put a lot of work into not doing recently. And it's paying off. And so I definitely want to share that with you guys, because I was always not understanding, why am I self-sabotaging? Like, why? I know I want this thing, so why am I doing this? You know, I know I want this result, so why aren't I taking the actions to get that? And that is what self-sabotage is, right? It's incongruent actions towards our goals. So self-sabotage comes from unintegrated parts of ourselves. And I don't think I've fully talked about this on my channel yet, so I'm really excited to share this. And it's also coming from Pluto in the 12th house. So let's unpack all of that and what I'm trying to say by that. So if you look at certain aspects of your chart, let's say I have Moon square Venus, which I actually do. So there's going to be some part of my moon archetype, which has to do with my mother, my inner child, my way of parenting myself. And then it's making a square to Venus, which is the archetype of the feminine, the relationships, the receiver, the harmony, and beauty and art and all those things in our life. So there are 2 parts of ourselves that are making a square. That means they're fighting. They are really not understanding one another. So my inner child needs something and is behaving in a certain way based off of that need. And my feminine archetype, who desires harmony and beauty in relationships, needs something completely different, or somewhat different, I should say, and is acting in a different way. And their behaviors are contradicting each other and not really getting the results that they're looking for in either case. Or sometimes, especially with oppositions, one will win. So like, let's say I had Moon opposite Venus, often one of those will win. Let's say my inner child really wins and I kind of reject my innate feminine needs with Venus and I go all the way towards my inner child needs. So you can start to see that the pendulum will swing in a specific direction, or you'll have weird behaviors for each of these archetypes within us that tries to meet its needs. And they never fully come together. They never understand what the middle ground is when you are self-sabotaging, because it's like 2 people pulling on a rope. They're trying to go in opposite directions. They're trying to do different things, and it's not having any positive results. And so what I like to do is create basically a meditation where you can talk to those parts and bring them together. And this is something I do in my astrology coaching. So if you're interested in that, definitely contact me at contact@williswim.com. I only accept a handful of people. And I am still kind of looking for maybe a couple more people. So if you're interested, definitely let me know, because I've already had people reach out, so it might fill up soon. But regardless, these are essentially different parts of ourselves that have different needs that are fighting for those needs, and it's resulting in self-sabotage. So let me give you a really practical example of this, because I already talked about the astrology and it probably made no sense to you guys. So let's say I have a really high need, my inner child, for a sense of security. Actually, let's do that reverse. Let's say my Venus, my inner feminine, has a very, very strong need for security, because that's actually true for me. My Venus sextile Saturn, there is a need for the known, for the traditional, for something concrete, something I can really sink my teeth into. And so one of the things that my inner feminine and Venus archetype will need is, being in the sign of Taurus, maybe lots of good food and maybe overeating, overindulging, as a result of that desire for comfort and stability and the known. So maybe that part of me wants to just stay up late, eat good food, hang out with a friend or hang out by myself and not push the limits. But my inner child, my moon, is with Uranus, and my inner child desires change and excitement, and it desires just a totally different approach to life. It wants things to be exciting and ecstatic, but my inner Venus just wants things to be calm and peaceful. So essentially, I might stay home one night when in reality, what I really needed was something maybe somewhere in between. Maybe I needed to go to that party. Maybe I needed to make that connection. But instead, I stayed home and ate a good meal and, stayed up watching TV or something comforting, right? So my need for comfort at that point is going to be kind of sabotaging my need for excitement or my need for change. So there are really important, I'll do a whole other video on this, but there are basic human needs. They're like a need for novelty and a need for, I can't remember the exact word. It was consistency, the opposite of novelty. So it's these two needs are fighting against each other. And so understanding that you have these two parts of your chart that are in conflict, you can better create a solution that will hopefully meet both needs and get them both to work together and have your full self come online to work you towards your goals. So self-sabotage is a really big part of why people don't achieve the things that they want, and it's a big part of what holds them back. The other two elements of self-sabotage come from Pluto and the 12th house. And there's probably more, but these are the most obvious ones to me. So a planet in the 12th house is going to be repressed. And I have a video that I will link down below. And if I forget, just look up 12th house to repress you, Courtney or Willis Bloom. Because this video, it talks about every single planet in the 12th house. It's very extensive, very thorough. It's based off of a book I read on the 12th house. And it's going to be so helpful to understand parts of you that are repressed and within the subconscious mind, because that's what the 12th house is. So these are parts that were disowned during childhood, that were not encouraged, that never fully emerged from us to see the light of day. So these parts will tend to project things outwards, will tend to try to get their needs met in really weird, roundabout ways that often comes as self-sabotage. There can be a lot of avoidance with these planets because they are not fully integrated. They're not fully recognized shadow aspects of the self. And what happens is they go rogue. They kind of start doing what they want to do, and it starts to negatively affect your life. And this often looks like addiction, other forms of escapism, ways that we can almost detach from our own reality and process things that are happening without actually having to be present to face them head on. And so that's why it comes out in projections a lot. So you can see your mistakes in other people, but it's very hard to see them in yourself. And Pluto works in a somewhat similar way. It tends to also repress things into the subconscious. It tends to make things secretive or hidden and harder to access in general. The 12th house is a little bit different in that it comes out often through that form of escapism and projections, while Pluto tends to just kind of push things down really, really far. And then it will randomly explode when you have a transit as this really intense energy in your life. So let's say you haven't been feeling things let's say you have Venus Pluto and you haven't been addressing things in your relationship. Actually, I know somebody who this happened to. You haven't been addressing things in your relationship that aren't working. You're kind of burying it, pushing it down. The truth is there, but it's being compacted. And actually Pluto, I believe, is related to nuclear weapons, and nuclear and atomic weapons, and which makes a lot of sense because okay, I'm not going to pretend like I know much about that, but I just have the visual of really compacting something down so dense that you light it on fire and then it's like this big bomb. And that's what happened with this person. Uranus passed her Pluto Venus, and then all of the truth kind of exploded out into her life and her relationships, and everything that she's been ignoring is suddenly coming to light. So it works in that way in which we are self-sabotaging by completely ignoring things and then having them blow up in our face, or us even blowing up on other people. And so it's self-sabotaging a little bit of a distinct way. but it is definitely an issue. So yeah, that's another way. So let's take a look at the third thing, which is a wounded will. And this is something I am very passionate about. This is an issue that I have with my chart and that I've personally worked to resolve recently, actually over the last few years. And I have just seen so many results in my life as a result of working on my will and on my Mars in particular. So that's kind of where I've been really trying to help people in my coaching sessions that I find that they've been attracted to me, and there's something around their Mars that needs a little bit of assistance. So what this means is that there is essentially something about your Mars that is wounded. There's something about your Mars that is not functioning properly. And Mars is our willpower, it's our determination, it's our energy, our ambition, our drive to succeed. It's also sexual energy and creative energy. There's other creative energies, but this is like the most sexual of the planets. And so you can see, if you've ever read Neville Goddard's book, is it Neville Goddard? I cannot remember. I think it's The Habits of Highly Successful People. Anyway, in this book, I'll link it if I can remember. There was this one part of this chapter that I will literally never forget, because it was this brand new concept that I had never thought of. I don't know why, but it was talking about how it was kind of an old book, so it's definitely a little bit like sexist, but it was talking to men and basically saying how these men became very successful when they learned how to choose the right partner and channel their passions and their sexual energy towards that partner, also within their business and within their entrepreneurship. So channeling the sexual energy, because they were saying that same energy is the energy that we use to create everything. So we use it to create life with our partners, but we also use it to create our businesses. We use it to create literally anything that you see around you. And so I don't know why I had never thought about that, because that makes so much sense to me now, but that is what Mars is that it's that energy and life force as well as our sun. And basically Mars is a part of us that fuels the sun in many ways. And so if we have Mars in, for example, a harsh aspect with Saturn, like a square or an opposition, or we have Mars in the 12th house, so it's super suppressed, or we have Mars in the South Node, or we have any kind of hard aspects with Mars and other planets, like Mars square Pluto, Mars square Neptune, Mars opposite Neptune, Mars conjunct Neptune. All of those things will start to take our animus, our drive forward, and kind of sputter it out. It will diffuse the energy, it will diffuse our sense of confidence, and it will make us not take action towards our goals. And so the wounded will, to me, is one of the most important things to heal, because this comes about in childhood when our parents essentially don't respect our process of becoming individuals, of becoming autonomous. When we start to say no, and we say, fuck you, mom and dad, I'm gonna go out and play with this piece of grass, even though you told me not to. You know, at age 2, when they stand up for themselves, they get a voice. There are different ways our parents can react to that. And if they react poorly, your will over time becomes wounded. Your ability to say no, to hold boundaries, to decide wholeheartedly what you want and what you need in a given situation becomes really murky. You don't learn how to trust your own instinct. You get confused about what direction you really need to go in. And this is what I am very passionate about, especially with empaths. And I want to make some kind of course with this later, especially with business, because I see empaths, they will often not trust their own gut. It's like they're so intuitive. They're the most intuitive out of all of the types of people, but yet they don't always trust their gut because their will is wounded and because their natural instinct has been kind of thwarted in some respects. So just ask yourself, have you noticed that you're slow to make decisions, that you doubt the decisions that you make, that you don't trust yourself and you let people gaslight you at times, that you struggle with boundaries? That is an indication that your Mars is wounded in your chart in some respect. And if that's you, I can help you with that. That is something, again, I'm very passionate about. If that's you, comment down below what aspects are going on in your chart, because that will really help me understand, everyone else understand what that looks like in your life and in astrology. Okay, the last one, the fourth one, is living in delusion, in passivity world. And oh my God, have I seen this so much. this is why we hear about spiritual bypassing, because the same planet involved in spirituality is the same planet involved in ignoring reality, which is a very fine line. So this is going to be Neptune. So planets that are touching Neptune in a strong aspect, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, even sextiles and trines, you can at times escape your life and lie to yourself and see what you are idealizing through Neptune. And this will allow you to avoid what's really going on, and this will hold you back from achieving the things that you really want. Because if you're not seeing what the problem is, you're not going to fix the problem, and you're not going to get to the other side with the solution. So this looks like avoidance, denial, passivity, limerence, which I'm going to do a whole video about this, but this is like looking at people through rose-colored glasses, really getting emotionally attached to people and loving them very profoundly without fully knowing them or accepting that they have flaws. Projection, that's a really big one. Victimhood, oh my gosh, victimhood with Neptune is one of the biggest things that I see out in this world today. And our generation, my generation, was born during Pluto's sextile Neptune. And I don't want to go super into this, but I just had this epiphany during meditation today that Pluto's about power, Neptune is about victimhood. And this, I do feel like our generation has really moved towards a victimhood narrative. It's all about why things are not fair, why things are not just. And there are very few solutions and people actually doing something about it. And anyway, the focus really matters. Are we focused on solutions, or are we focused on our victimhood? Energy vampires, attracting energy vampires into our lives. Super big for empaths, super big for strong Neptune people. Do you have lack of boundaries? People can feel that. You will attract energy vampires and narcissists. These are people who will feed off of your light, who can feel that you are lacking some type of important boundary spiritually and emotionally and mentally. You can at times feel helpless. You can at times be a martyr. So this is you saying, you know, taking on all this responsibility for others, and then it's like, oh, I'm like sacrificing myself, you know, and nobody asked you to do that. Nobody wants you to do that, truly deep down inside. Being overly sensitive. This is me. I am calling myself out. I am overly sensitive. I'm a highly sensitive person, and I am working on containing those emotions and being able to process them. It's definitely a hard experience. Being very tired. So having like porous energy just leak throughout your day and not having proper methodology to protect your energy. So there are so many ways in which Neptune and planets in the 12th house can be drained and leaked of their energy, of their potency, of their power, either by avoiding things or people taking advantage of them. And ultimately, this will lead you to not get what you want out of life. Because if you're continuously giving and giving and giving and never filling up your own cup, everyone hears this and talks about this all the time, but it's like it's not cemented fully into people's bodies and lives. They still do this all the time. And I honestly, it's like this year where I feel like I've finally changed that narrative. But that has been me for so many years, where I would prioritize everyone else's needs above my own. And now this year, I'm like, this is me and this is my container, and I have to fill this up and take care of this before anything else. So if you recognize that that's holding you back, then working on boundaries will be super important. And I think I'll do some videos and stuff around boundaries at a later point. So these are the 4 major things that are likely holding people back. So the first is fear, inadequacy, failure, fear of getting hurt, feeling like you're not enough. This is strongly linked to Saturn, 8th house South Node. The other is self-sabotage, and this is coming from unintegrated aspects of our chart or parts of ourselves, as well as Pluto in the 12th house. We also have a wounded will, which comes from a wounded Mars, and the wounded Mars can come from various things like Mars in the 12th, hard aspects to Mars, Saturn in contact to Mars, things of that nature, the South Node. And then lastly, we have living in delusion, living in too much in your Neptune, where you are not understanding the line between what is spiritual and how to tap into that and what is actually here in front of you. And that, again, is such a fine line. That is such a thin line that people really go over a lot in the spiritual community, and something that I feel like needs to be talked about more. I mean, we talk about spiritual bypassing, but I feel like we don't talk enough about ungrounded spiritual people who can't hold a schedule, can't hold a business, who can't hold a boundary, and can't contain themselves in this world because they're too porous and open. It's like they don't know. Anyway, I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to go on and on about that. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by giving me a thumbs up, and comment down below if you want to see more videos like this. Definitely be sure, if you haven't already seen it, to check out my previous video, which is how to reach your fullest potential. In that one, I go over the low and high vibration of each of the planets so that you guys can kind of decide, okay, I'm a little bit in my low vibe of Neptune, for example, or high vibe of my Neptune, and you can adjust your life accordingly. And next week, I am going to talk about more how to heal these internal blockages, how to actually do something about these things that I've been presenting to you. So these videos will definitely help you if you apply them. I hope that you do. If you want help in this action and having a little bit of hand-holding through the process, then definitely check out coaching. I am now offering packages and one-off sessions. If you want to learn more, you can contact me at contact@willsboom.com or check out my website down below, and I hope you have a great day.